Namo Buddhaya. Venerable members of the Mahasangha, religious dignitaries, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So today my topic is Buddhism as a global civilization force. And it seems to me the band that we had, I think we need Buddhism. That's the task of the modern period. I think we have to bring Buddhism to music and aesthetics and so on. I think it is a timely need. Now let me first of all thank to our Excellency Mr. Buddhi Athav, the Ambassador of Sri Lanka, and also his team for inviting me, but also to the monks in Paris, especially Venerable Chandaratana, for suggesting my name. Now, Buddhism can be appreciated as a global civilization. Historical records, literary materials, and epigraphic evidence suggest Buddhism embedded a revolutionary philosophical thought, and also it contributed influential monastic practices. Not only that, it also gave important moral ethos for people to follow. And a tradition that began in the 6th century, ancient India, after 1,200 years later, reached to Far East, to Japan. And here we see Buddhism gradually embracing the entire Asian continent. The entire landscape of Asia in the south, Sri Lanka, with the rich cultural and religious heritage of Theravada Buddhism, a tradition that claimed to be home since the 3rd century BC, with inspirational diplomacy of Emperor Ashoka. We can see to Japan in the Far East with the strong tradition of Mahayana tradition embracing Far East, perhaps with some Chinese flavor, developed in a sophisticated manner many cultural elements, linguistic contributions, social services, and also many commercial intercourses along the Silk Road, paved the way, spreading Buddhism from India to mainland China. And Buddhism became an important element of powerful teachings and ethical values and philosophical thoughts. And here also we cannot ignore aesthetic artifacts that Buddhism contributed. Now here is a scene of Sri Lanka, and now important part for Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism too is what we call the Tripitaka, the 3 baskets of the Buddhist canon. And now broadly we conceive as it contains the word of the Buddha, the inspirational words of the historical Buddha, and that was very important and most important critical ingredient in that civilizational force that made Buddhism accessible to many people who were different in belief, who were different in their thinking, who were different in their customs. And Buddhism began to inspire vast collection of people. And the Tripitaka is interesting that it embedded, the synergies and processes that was very important in civilizing people. And now this is some of the manuscripts found in the Hugh Neville collection in the British Library. And there are more than 2,400 manuscripts, not all of them the Tripitaka. And actually, the first Tripitaka or collection seems to have come to National Library in Paris. One of the consulars called Grimbold, and he brought the collection around 1865. And we should be thankful to those individuals to making it available for our research and enriching the Western scholarship as well as civilization. Now, there are plenty of evidence scattered across Asia, whether it's Indonesia or Cambodia in the southeast, or Myanmar or Korea in physically distant regions beyond the two prominent homes of Buddhist thought, India and China. The historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, born as a prince in a smaller kingdom in the present-day Nepal, remains a legendary figure with gigantic character, with many insightful observations on the life and death, as well as, that's the important part, how we can live well here and now. And also, he proposed that we can seek freedom not being attached, but he pointed out the importance of being free, all forms of bondage in the fullest sense of the term. An inspirational figure even today, after 2.5 millennium, for many civilizations, that's the important part, for many civilizations, even for those which have not fully embraced Buddhism. His translocal message, as we identify today as Buddhism, still remains relevant for contemporary world. Its politics, governance, and human well-being around the globe. Now, our Venerable Shakya already mentioned, Buddhism is relevant for contemporary initiatives of regeneration of ecosystems, sustaining wooded and forest lands, and most importantly, cultivating ethos and values as UNESCO holds, cultivating ethos and values on human respect and dignity. Very important. Today, we prefer to identify Siddhartha Gautama as an ancient Indian philosopher. This is only part of the story, an important part. But there are more to it, more than a philosopher. And the gathering here, people who are assembled here, evidence for that. The full impact of his legacy, much wider and expansive. His thoughts inspirational observations, forthright visions, and worldview will be more relevant and be more appropriated more readily by coming generations in the 21st century if preserved well today and interpret accurately. That's very important. Interpret accurately and impartially, and kept for posterity, for renewing the entire world and planet. We are not sure of the exact date of the Siddhartha Gautama's birth. We have been provided an important clue, however, by Emperor Ashoka, and Emperor Ashoka wanted to see the Buddha, and he identified the physical location, and that's the photograph of evidence. And now this filler in Lumbini is the only evidence that we can use that there was a person called Buddha. Without this, we will be in completely darkness. And so Emperor Ashoka marked the spot of earth in which the Buddha was born. Now, a general consensus can be developed in light of recent academic explorations. The earliest date that we can assign to the Buddha is late 7th century. The latest date that we can assign to the Buddha is the late 5th century. Here we have a problem. There is a gap of 200 years in historical terms in locating the Buddha according to the accepted current chronologies. The chronologies developed in Sri Lanka primarily with the focus of Mahavansa and Deepavansa. We understand the Buddha is a 6th century figure. And now that's the chronology used most of the time in the Western scholarship. Though we do not know exact date of the Siddhartha Gautama, but we can be confident on the following points. Archaeology as well as Buddhist imagination over the centuries maintain Lumbini was the Buddha's birthplace, the slide here. And we know already mentioned his awakening in Buddha Gaya is also quite confident fact because Asoka himself has put some pillars. You see, these are quite important, these writings coming from the 3rd century, outlining, at least we get the records 100 years or 200 years near to the Buddha. And then we know about his death also, that occurred in Buddha, in this place. And now here is the Buddha Gaya, the Sri Lankan Mahabodhi temple, and this is the where Buddha passed away when he was 80. Now, important fact, the simplicity. He was born under a tree, he attained enlightenment under a tree, and he passed away under a tree. Simplicity. A lot for us to learn. And all of this took place on a full moon day, and full moon in May, and that's why we are here, and we are celebrating it. And with the initiatives from Sri Lanka since 1998, the UN 54th General Assembly accepted Vesak as the Buddha's Day. And now, this year, we celebrate 2563rd Vesak year. And this is counted from the passing away of the Buddha. Now, important point. From the very beginning, Buddhism was a translocal tradition. It was not rooted on a particular ethnicity, particular race, or particular caste, or particular class, or particular location. It was a liberation force of all humanity and nations. Its message of liberation was shared, disseminated, and inculcated around the globe by the venerable members of the Mahasangha, with exceptional help from the lay Buddhist community all across the globe. And Buddha's advice to his 60 disciples, the first 60 disciples, is quite illuminating. He says, Charata bhikkhave charikang bahujana hitaya bahujana sukhaya attaya hitaya sukhaya deva manusanam. Here, his instruction is, you must wander for the benefit of the multitude, for the happiness of the multitude, for the well-being of both human beings and the divine being. This is a very, very important message. And mission of Buddhist monks and nuns was this sharing the Buddha's message. Now, this is not conversion, and this is advising upon the request. And without any exception, it was carried out without any profit, gain, power, benefits, or personal ambition. Buddhism landed in Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC. It was a direct result, as I noted earlier, one might call religiously inspired international diplomacy of Emperor Ashoka. Now, early Buddhist communities found traveling as the mode of living. Unsettled life, what we call homeless life, anagarika, lifestyle was the ideal. It enabled the Buddhist teaching to go far and wide. Boats, caravans, wayside rest houses, in particular the traders. Today we tend to disassociate with business, but we must not forget the trade was a very important part in the spread of the Buddhism. And we note the Silk Route and its caravans with traders enable Buddhist Dhammadusas, messengers of Dhamma, to reach far and wide, thousands of miles. Records suggest an emerging active Buddhist presence in China, the Mahayana tradition, the home of East Asia, around the 1st century of the Common Era. That strand of Buddhism later, politically, was very important. The divided China, North and the South, was unified with Buddhist inspiration. And from China, Buddhism reached to Korea. From there, it reached even further to Japan in the 6th century, giving birth to an innovative manifestation of Buddhism, what we call fondly as Zen or Chan Buddhism, as you can see here. And now this is the tradition which captivated the imagination of the West after the World War II. All Asian societies became receptive to Buddhist ideas. Buddhism found fertile ground every corner of the globe. Buddhist thought inspired those nations in various levels, and to significant degree because of formidable influence of Buddhist thought, values, as you can see it here, ethos and practices. Some societies, such as Myanmar, nowadays we call it Thailand, and Siam, nowadays we call it Thailand, also Myanmar, developed a notion being a Buddhist is being Thai, or being Burmese, or being Sri Lankan. A close affinity developed over the centuries, Buddhism and local cultures. And these are quite important. Now, my question, I cannot answer all of them, but my questions are, what enabled Buddhism to reach so many people? How Buddhism reached to depths of those Asian societies? How did the teachings of the Buddha captivate human hearts with hopes and aspirations? How did Buddhism tame and captivate foreign lands and countries, most importantly, without resorting to sword? Very much in a peaceful manner, find your ground all around the world. The mystery of this spread, the mystery of the spread of Buddhism is still yet to be discovered. The message of the Buddha reached wider and far into remote regions of the globe. Its message of universal humanity appealing to many people in many walks of life. Most importantly, its proposition of freedom from all forms of bondage was promising to the world. Its practical approach of releasing knots rather than making new ones was pragmatic and helped to soothe the minds of many. Rather than complicating human puzzles, relaxing the puzzles through insight, observation, and objectivity was the central tenets of the Buddha's teaching. The pragmatic message of testing things before one embraced them, comparing things to one's own experience in the past, can be taken as the yardstick of fruitful living even today. And that remains a central idea of the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha, a 6th century figure, was clear that one does not become superior or inferior just because of one's birth or being in a particular family or lineage or caste. One's actions are the key demarcation of one's nobility and also exceptional humanity. It proposes principles to empower both men and women. I think we should note, in the history, Buddha appears to be the first person that clearly and boldly maintain that not only males who are capable of doing things successfully, but females are also equally capable of achieving liberation as well. In the world of gendered identities as ours, I think recognition that women are also skillful in certain areas like men, even in cases where men are not good at it, is I think we should note. So the gender equality and the universal humanity remain cornerstones of centuries of advice, teachings that Buddhism propagated. All these ideas were powerful insights that embrace all people, and this doesn't mean only the Buddhist. They provided valuable groundwork for joining in and uniting peoples and nations around the globe. We are blessed. We are blessed because that we can have some glimpse to the Buddha's wisdom still. So this Vesak event at UNESCO gives an opportunity for us to be more open-minded, to be more tolerant, and to accept the beliefs and practices that may, on the surface, challenging. May the Triple Gem bless you. May you live happily. May you have courage at least to adopt one of these ideas that I shared today. Happy Vesak for all of you. Thank you very much.